All right. So if you have, if you've been through this course before, in other words, if you have been through the sales leadership class before, you will notice a lot of differences. This class, along with all the rest of the training, is getting rebooted. And so this is the first time I'm going through the content this particular way. If you've never been through it before, well, don't worry. You are getting everything that you were getting before, just wrapped differently and presented in a very, very different fashion. So as we get started today, I would like to do a transfer in. Some of you know each other, some of you don't know each other. It might be that you met at convention briefly, but I'm going to go around the room and if you would please introduce yourself, who you are, where you are.
Where's my glasses?
From a design associate standpoint, is this first DA hire, second DA hire? You know, what's your process in terms of in terms of design associate hire? So Rob, let me start with you.
Okay, I'm Rob Lacrosse. I'm in Brighton, Michigan, and hired my first DA, which is Adam Alexander. What else did you want me to say in this?
How long have you been in business?
I'm on my third year right now, and actually we're off to a good start this year.
Nice, nice. Jim Porch.
All right, well, that makes it easy. I'm Jim Porch, and I bought the Wilmington, North Carolina territory, although it sometimes goes by Ocean Isle Beach or Charlotte. I bought it back in October of 2021. I think it had been in operation for over 10 years.
Sounds right. And in terms of design associates, is this your first hire, second hire?
This is my first. When I bought the business, we had 2 design associates. So this is my first hire.
Nice. Ken Kish.
Ken Kish from the Detroit metropolitan area. We are up that kind of the east side of the suburbs of Detroit. And I've hired a part-time DA that's kind of she's got experience selling floors, and she only works about 25 hours a week. So we're gonna try to fill in some time there. And then I'm looking to hire another one sometime in the beginning of the second quarter, full-time.
Nice. Nice. Let's see, Jason Barrett, if you can do this without putting the car in the ditch.
I can, thank you. I'm almost to the office. Good morning, Jason Barrett. I am in Bloomington, Indiana, sort of southern Indiana, Indianapolis, Bloomington area. I came in business time with Jim, so bought it in October, but really didn't know until I guess this is my 13th month. And my first DA is coming on, and I hired him by the 1st of January. He's got about 20 years of flooring experience, so we've been able to get him acclimated to some pieces of it, but definitely systematic stuff and the inspired sales. Been great exposure so far. So look forward to all the support.
Nice. All right. So while we're riding around in Indiana, let's go over to Terry.
Hey guys, Terry Turman. I am in Indiana with Jason. I'm in Carmel, Indiana, which is the north suburbs of Indianapolis. Started, I purchased as a resale business, purchased it in 2020. My DA hiring.
It's clear that cell phone service doesn't work on the road in Indiana, right? as we cut in and out. All right, so let's see. I know that Terry bought the Barrios territory within Indianapolis. And I'm going to jump from Terry over to Jenny Hong.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Jenny Hong from Northeast Atlanta. I bought a resale in April of 2021. I have a DA and I'm looking to add my second DA. He's actually in is it the February class? It's in the class right now. So really excited about adding another salesperson to the team.
Nice. All right, let's go to Joe Barker.
Hey guys, Joe Barker, Kansas City. Been in business 8 years. I've had some DAs when I first started, realized I wasn't ready for them, and now just hired. I've had one that started in basically middle of January.
Nice. And let's see, how about Christy?
Hi, good morning. I'm Christy Picasso. I'm in San Antonio, Texas, and we've been in business for a year and a half. And Jeff is our first DA.
Nice. Matt, coming from Chicago.
Morning, Matt Ferguson. We're creeping up on, it'll be 4 years in May, and we're in Plainfield, which is west Chicago. We had a DA for 9 months. It's kind of miserable, and then let him go in October. And then we just hired a young lady, Sherry, last week. So she just a couple days ago signed her up. So
Nice.
we're excited.
Nice. Let's see. So Adrian, if you are with us, you would introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Adrian. I'm in Salt Lake City, and this will be DA. He's officially starting on Monday, but jumped on the call here a couple of days ago and been in business for about 3 years.
Nice. Let's see, Kim.
Hello, sir. Yep, I'm Kim Gustafson. We've been in business. We bought a resale in April of 2021, started running it in June of 2021. We have a DA that we hope to keep. The first one we actually hope to keep, but she's our fourth, sadly. So in that period of time, we've had 3 bad hires, or 3 that didn't work out.
All right. Let's see, how about Mark McMurray?
This month is 6 years in business for us, and we are hiring a replacement DA for our DA who we lost a DA in October, hired another one, and she quit very quickly, and so we're hiring a replacement DA. So we're getting back up to 1.
There you go. Let's see, and I think last but not least, no, I've got 2 more for sure. Marie.
Hey, yeah, sorry it's late. I had a walk-in customer, booked an appointment. So we're in 3 years in business. My DA that I just hired at the beginning of the year is my replacement for the first DA I had. She was with me for about a year and then she left last June. Took me 3 false start hires to get her, the new person on board. So she's been with me. She's almost done with the self-paced training, and now she's going to go through the class with everybody. So,
Jason Brana, please.
Jason Brana in Northwest Central Orlando. I've been in business almost 1 year now, so 1 year in March it will be. I'm just hiring my first DA. Let's see how it goes.
There you go. All right, and now I think we've got everybody. Chris, would you introduce yourself to the group?
Hi, good morning. I'm Chris Petrowski. I'm in Mesa, Arizona. This is my, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is my 5th DA. I've been in business. This is my 4th year. I currently have 1 DA on the road, and this is my 5th. So I'm really excited to have him. He just started this week, so he has some flooring experience, ready to go.
Nice, nice. Okay, so when we think about this sales leadership class, I've got 1 more coming in now, Jeremy Tucker. Jeremy on here. And we'll go. Jeremy, there he is. He connects. There he is. Jeremy, we've just gone through the room introducing people. Would you just introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sorry I'm late. I totally forgot that we had this meeting. So hi everybody. I'm the late one, Jeremy Tucker. I'm out of St. Louis, Missouri. And on here for some training for a new DA that I just hired.
Nice.
Is that
all right? So
all you needed, Arlen?
That you're good. You're good.
Okay.
So let's get started here. So this is an interesting class for me because there's several of you that are on here this morning where your design associates have either gone through the virtual material or are going through the virtual material. And so a lot of them I am seeing in class, some of them I'm not seeing in class. And so that's interesting. The other thing that I'll share with you about this particular class is this is the biggest inspired sales class that I've ever tried to run. There are 17 new franchise businesses that are in this class. So by the time you add some spouses in there and business partners, there's about 23 franchise owners, we'll call franchise owners and spouses that are kind of going through this. At the same time, it's roughly 26 or 27 design associates. So the Inspired Sale class is quite full. It's over 50 people on the Zoom call, and this week's class went well. Depending on how next week's goes, I may end up having to split it and do like a morning and an afternoon, and split by time zone or whatever. We'll see. That hasn't been decided yet. We'll see how next week's goes. Wednesdays went really, really well. As we start getting into breakout rooms and things that require a little bit more, not one-on-one, but small group attention, I may end up having to split the class in two. But more on that later if we have to do that. So what do I want to go through today? I just want to spend a minute and show you the scorecard. Most of you have seen this before. For some of you, maybe it's been a while. I do want to spend the bulk of our time talking about the coaching model and how to do ride-alongs with your design associates, delivering feedback, and just like in 45 seconds or less, we're going to mention the Inspired Sales System. And I want to show you the company story slide names. And the only reason I'm sharing this with you is because this is part of your design associates' homework. And so I just want to make sure you have the same information that they do. That's all. So let me bounce from here real quick to the scorecard. Everything always comes up on the wrong screen, so I'll make this a little bigger so that you can see it. You will get a copy of this. You'll get a copy of this every time I do the Inspired Sale class. So every time I do an Inspired Sale class, I send out a recap that has a recording, that has the Zoom recording from the call. It has the notes or the PowerPoint presentation. If there's any handouts that we talked about during class, those get attached to it, and you will get a screenshot version of this spreadsheet. So I want to just make sure that you understand how this spreadsheet gets read. First, you can see we've got Adam Alexander here that's working for Rob. Attendance, he was on the first call. That's great. If I slide over here to Nick Covey, he was not on the call. Okay, so it's either 100 or 0. I do tell people that if they miss the call and they watch the recording afterwards, they can come back to me and get 75% credit. So Cody's got an 80 because there were some extra points available, and so he's got an 80 for coming back and watching it after the fact. Then down below here, I'm tracking their progress through Floor U. So they have 5 weeks worth of Floor U training to do. In addition to that, there's a Salesforce course. And when you log on to Floor U, right there on the website, right there on the main homepage of Floor U, those weeks are listed right there for you. It's very easy to find. So I've got, I look at April, since she's with Marie and Marie's here. April is essentially done with the Floor U material. Yeah, there might be a couple of things in week 5. There's some of the videos in week 2 that for whatever reason they absolutely will not mark as complete. So if it says 90 or 93, I consider it done. She's essentially done with everything that's on floor U, so good job there. Same thing with Jennifer for Janet. So you can almost tell the ones that have been around for a little bit longer than others. In terms of what they should be doing, by next Tuesday, they should have week 1 done, and they should be making progress in Salesforce. They don't have to have that completely finished, but that should be about 20% of the way done by then. So again, I will send this. The other thing that I do record here, just so that it's easy for you guys to see, is I record the number of ride-alongs that they have recorded. So you've got, again, in every one of those recaps, there's a link to the ride-along tracking sheet. And that ride-along tracking sheet is for them to fill out, not for you to fill out. I'm not trying to put any additional work on your plate. This is for your DAs to fill out. So when I look at this ride-along sheet, for example, I can just scroll across and, you know, Adam doesn't have any listed. That's okay. I've got Jason. Bob has got, you know, he's got 40 listed. That's great. I've asked them if they would to just highlight the ones when you guys land sales together. Highlight those so that we can sort of celebrate that in class. That's always a lot of fun. So any questions about the scorecard or the ride-along sheet?
Nope.
Oh, pretty straightforward, yeah?
Yep, straightforward.
All right, good. So let's dive into the coaching model. All right, I'm just going to throw this out there for group discussion. What is the difference between training and coaching? I like to think of what I'm doing as a lot of the initial training, and what you're doing is a lot of coaching, but what's the difference between the two?
I'd say training is sitting and watching something, and coaching is letting things happen and then making corrections as things go.
Okay, other thoughts?
I think training is learning something new. Coaching is guiding them through that process, kind of honing it in a little bit.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I mean, I think, you know, training is, I'm giving you new knowledge, new skill, or new ability, but the emphasis on new, you don't know this. Once you know it, then how do you get better at it? And coaching is all about improving a baseline of performance.
There you go. I like that. Okay, so when I think of this, you know, I think of training as the attainment of a new skill, right? There's nobody that has to take a professional ball player and train them in something. They already have that. But coaching is forever. Coaching is something that no matter where you are in your game, whether it's I think of professional athletes, I think of musicians, I think of artists, any skill can be improved through coaching, through practice and through coaching. And so there's a model that we use for coaching, and it's a 4-step coaching process where it's very intentional. So when we want to coach someone, it's a very, very intentional, this is the time that now I'm going to coach you. And so there's a preparation phase in that to understand, you know, if I'm the coach, I am purposely sitting down to put together my thoughts on what is it that's going to be coached. And then we have an event and I give the employee feedback, and there's always follow-up. Now this might be, I'm going to use the context today of a ride-along, but it doesn't have to be a ride-along. I mean, this could be something that I might be sitting with my office manager and I'm coaching my office manager on a better way to do a setup call, as an example. So I'm going to purposely sit down and put together my thoughts on what that's going to look like. I'll have my office manager do a setup call and then give feedback. And in terms of follow-up, what are we going to do to put that feedback into practice? And one of the things that's really, really important about coaching, you guys know the transition curve. Everybody has seen this 100 times, I'm sure. But your design associate, as they are brand new in this business, or maybe they've been with you for 4 or 5 weeks, but certainly not much longer than that, when they first came on board, they were very, very happy about coming to work for you, but they had no idea how difficult this job can really be. I mean, it's just natural, right? It doesn't matter what's new in our life. It might be a new job, it might be a new car, it might be a new relationship. We walk into things with this idea that everything is wonderful because we don't know the other side of the coin yet. We haven't seen it yet. At some point in your design associates training phase, or maybe even they make it through the training and they really haven't had the experience of doing it yet, but at some point they sort of look over the edge and say, this is a lot harder than what I thought it was going to be. And it immediately drops them into this informed pessimism. So now I realize that it's a lot harder to get somebody to actually fork over $5,000 for a floor. Selling a $15,000 job is really, really tough. And this informed pessimism oftentimes is internally reflected. In other words, a design associate looks inward and says, what have I done? Why can't I do this? This is too hard for me, okay? But that naturally invokes this wall that goes up. And so as humans, we have a natural self-protection, the ability to protect ourselves, and this wall comes up. And what ends up happening is that internal focus ends up pointing outward pretty quickly. And so all of a sudden it becomes, well, I can't do that. And the reason I can't do it is because Rob's prices are too high, or because Kim's not treating me right, or because Christy doesn't know what she's doing, or because, whatever, right? All of a sudden it becomes, it's not my fault that I can't sell, it's somebody else's fault. It's our vendors' prices are too high, or all these leads suck. I mean, whatever it is, it's instead of looking at the mirror to understand what can I do better to take advantage of the opportunity that's here, it turns into a finger pointing exercise. And this is natural. And the reason I bring this up to you guys is because if your design associate hasn't gotten to this yet, it is coming, okay? Everybody goes through this. So what ends up happening after this is they end up in this, it's a horrible funk. And the reality is that we all go through this. Officially this is called the crisis of meaning. I call it the pit of despair. This is where fight or flight really comes into play. And as franchise owners, it's really, really hard for you to get out of the business. I mean, turning around and selling this business or just writing Tom Wood a big fat check to get out, that's a really, really tough thing. But it's really easy for your DA to get out. All they have to do is hand you a tablet back and walk out the door. So when your design associate gets into this pit of despair where everything looks hopeless, and it will happen, everything looks hopeless, they're not going to be able to pull themselves out of this. So that's where, I've encouraged them to get on the group me with the other DAs from the class. I encourage them to be connected with the other people in the class. I encourage them to stay very connected with you so that there's a coach that can help pull them out of that pit. And then they have time to reflect on the real world situation, and now they can go on with the job with a very realistic view of what's out there, okay? All right, so why am I bringing this up in the context of coaching? It's important for you as the coach to understand where your design associate is on the transition curve. I mean, imagine, if you will, let's go back to the office manager that you're trying to coach them on a better setup call. If they're down here thinking that life is meaningless and, I mean, this job is horrible and Chick-fil-A is paying $15 an hour, so I'm just going to go down there. If that's where their mindset is, then when you tell them, hey, let's reword this a little bit or let's reword that, they're just going to block it. I mean, it's not going to sink in. So it's important to understand where are they on the curve. And it's important for you as the coach to be able to help manage somebody through this. Now, the luxury, if you will, of the role that I'm in is I get to bring people initial training. And for the most part, I tend to work with people, right in through here. Your design associates rarely get to this point during training. So I'm giving this to you ahead of time because as it relates to coaching your design associate, it really does matter where they are on the transition curve. Does that make sense? I look at me personally and I say, okay, I'm over here and I won't even use my Floor Coverings International, right? I'll say, I love to race go-karts. You guys all know that about me. And, you know, yep, I've gone through this as well. I've gotten to the point where, my gosh, it's hopeless. I'm never going to get better at this. And, you know, I would say that right now I'm over here. That's great. So I'm in a very coachable position. If somebody wanted to watch me at the track, if somebody wanted to put some data sensors on the cart and see what I'm doing, measure where I'm braking, how I'm getting in and out of corners, I would absolutely love that kind of feedback. It'd be fantastic. Okay. But if I were over here and everything's everybody else's fault, the motor's no good, whatever, I'm just not going to take that feedback very well. So when you're getting ready to coach somebody, it's really important that you understand what is the gap that you're trying to close. So I don't mean like I want my design associates' close rate to get better. You can't, despite what people might say and how easy it is to put on a spreadsheet, you can't just go sit in a room and say, okay, today we're going to work on your close rate. It doesn't work that way. There's some specific part of the sales process that you have to say, this is what we're going to work on. Now, you know, if you're not 100%, you know, I'm doing the inspired sales start to finish, that's not what I'm talking about. Whatever it is, you know, it might be their follow-up process. It might be the way that they're measuring something. It might be whatever it is, right? So again, as an example, let's just use follow-up. So what is the gap? Well, maybe they're only following up with a customer once after their appointment. Well, there's a gap there. So what is your goal, and what do you want them to do with that? How do you want them to change their follow-up habits so that it improves their close rate? So yes, the close rate is a measurement, but you don't walk in a room and say, okay, today we're going to work on close rate. You have to work on part of the process. You've got to have, ideally, you've got performance data to be able to show this is, you know, I've gone back and looked and I see where you're only following up with people once after the appointment and never again. Okay, so there's real data, right? And what resources do you need to be able to deal with it? So when it comes to preparing for a coaching session, preparing for the coaching session means that as the coach, you understand where they are, where you're trying to get them so that you can show them what that gap is, and ideally use data so that they buy into that. How have you guys, because several of you have had DAs in the past, when you guys are coaching your design associates, how do you identify, and this is not so much for me as it is for everybody else on the call, how do you identify what that gap looks like and how you want to sit down and coach somebody?
I'll go. For me, I identify the gap by looking at their business plan and understanding when I sat down with them what their goals were and their objectives, and identify where they're at year to day or where they're tracking against that. That's how I get to the gap and understand whether they're on or off. And then once I've identified on or off, I go to the offs and then sit down with my DA specifically and ask questions, i.e. through like the L10 meeting process, to ask what, you know, asking questions to see what he feels he can be doing on his end to get that to his plan so that he can get back on track within those specific goals. And then we kind of toss it back and forth to say, okay, how about we try this? And then just determine what are a couple of the next best steps to try to improve that process.
Nice. Nice. And by the way, even if maybe this is your first design associate, that's okay. Every one of the people that's on this call has had an incredible employment experience before Floor Coverings International. So please feel free to go back to that experience to share as well. So how do you gap an employee to help them understand what it is that needs to be improved, or to take ownership in the fact that they need improvement?
I'll go. So I think if you're trying to gap your employee, you got to know where they currently are and where they want to be, where we want them to be. And then what's the difference between those 2 points, and what's causing that, and what are we focusing on to try to work on elements within the process that that belongs to.
Nice, okay. Anyone else?
I'm just
I
gonna
don't know, I
add
think
the
another thing
obvious.
is-
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Kim. It's all
No,
right.
I was just gonna add the obvious. I think kindly and compassionately is really important. You need to express the information in a way that you would be willing to hear it.
I like that.
I agree.
not
I
good
think
at
that's where
that,
I was
but I
going
like
to, is sort of start off with something positive and make sure, because a lot of these folks that we'll be coaching have a certain level of experience, maybe more than we do at times on certain things, and going into it with a positive manner or approach, I think definitely helps the, if there is any sting to it, helps to alleviate that.
Here you go.
At the risk
Good.
of sounding really simple, Arlen, I wrestled with your question. But then I realized that the answer that I use, I just ask them. I mean, it's gonna sound silly, but if I were coaching a pitcher, I would say, okay, so tell me what you think you're working on with your pitch. And then he would tell me something, I'd say, okay, and then I would observe them pitch. And sometimes they're right, it's whatever they think it is. And sometimes you're watching and you're like, no, that's not really the issue. And that becomes an interesting point of feedback.
Good, I like that, I like that. And that sets us up for during the coaching session, right? So during the coaching session, it's great to either be able to demonstrate it yourself, or like Mark is saying, look at another pitcher and see what they're doing, right? So whether you're demonstrating it or you put them in front of somebody that can demonstrate it, giving them the opportunity to see it done the way that it should be done, and then observing them and coaching them. So I love the pitching example. Can you guys think of other examples where, and maybe this is more in the floor coverings arena, but can you give us examples of where you've had a design associate or an office manager watch either you or somebody else do it the way you want to see it done, and then observe and coach them? Can you guys give some examples of that?
Well, Arlen, when I was coaching my first DA, in the beginning, I would just go on the ride along with him and just follow the Inspire Sales, made him assess me through that. I forgot what you call that, that little assessment sheet. And it was funny because, I have my own little twist to my process, but that's just me. So I had to put the discipline in the 10-step Inspire process. So I said, okay, I'm going to do from beginning to end, you grade me. And I go there and it was textbook. I literally land it right there. And I'm like, that's how you do it. And he was like, I got it. So I followed the textbook 10-step process and it worked. And I guess he realized, okay, not that he did it to the T, but that was a way for me to demonstrate that's how you close the deal.
Nice, nice. All right, so let's talk about giving somebody feedback. When you're giving, so you've had an opportunity to watch somebody do something, and you noted some things that need to be done differently or whatever, and now we want to give the design associate. We'll just go ahead and zone in on the DA. Now we're going to zone in on the design associate and how you're going to give them feedback. So we'll get into what's on the screen in a moment. What do you guys see as the most critical pieces of being able to give feedback to somebody?
I think one of the areas is being able to coach it in real time. There's a point where you have a good area of time to coach that versus a feedback that is maybe not well timed.
Okay, so the timing.
I would say the attitude about it, it should be positive, not punitive, right? So we're trying to help them get better. We're trying to identify things that they did well, areas where they might want to work on. And we're framing it like in the Army, we used to call it the shit sandwich. You would put the nice bread on both sides of the bad news, if there is any. You want to start off with something good and here's what we're working on, and then wrap it up with something else positive on the end.
I like that. Yeah, I had a boss that used to say, you pat them on the back, then kick them in the ass, then pat them on the back again.
I also think you have to practice what you preach. Like you cannot ask them or tell them they have to be doing something that you're not doing yourself.
Good. Good. I saw Terry come off mute.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I think it's important to get their perspective up front too, right? And that's part of, I think our coaching model is, okay, what do you think you did well, and where do you think you need to improve? Because, and I've seen this happen. I thought, man, you just bombed the company story. That was terrible. You know, they say, oh, I think I know the company story, right? And so it just helps you in coaching to know, okay, how, you know, just so that you don't slam them on something that they thought they did well. Well, you can, you know how to caress that.
I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
think
important.
I
Sorry,
think
who was
the
that?
thing, just ask a question, ask them what they thought, and then kind of work your feedback that you were going to say, give them into aligning a little bit with what they were thinking, so that it's not hammering them too much.
Sure.
Doesn't
Yeah,
feel
it's
that.
important. It's important that they give their feedback first, right? You want them to be able to self-analyze. You want them to take ownership. I mean, if they think that they just nailed the company story and you're over here going, I don't even know what that was. Is that the Napa company story? Because we don't do auto parts. I mean, what's happening here? It's different when they give their feedback first and they take ownership in what it is that they're saying. Your feedback should be absolutely accurate. I mean, I try really, really hard when I'm giving feedback to somebody to actually remember word for word what they said. Almost like a little recording is going off in my brain, so that I can tell somebody, when you said this, this is how the customer reacted. It's a whole lot better to be specific. I like what Marie said, being supportive and positive, and really to be future focused, right? So yes, we're looking backwards to this coaching event. We're looking at the coaching event, but I don't need to bring up everything from the past. We need to think about what we're going to do different in the future. Now, the last point on this slide is probably the thing that we're probably the least likely to do, but it might be one of the most important things. Generally speaking, after we've given somebody feedback, we said this is what they saw, and they've given their feedback, and we've given our feedback, and we've come to an agreement on, this is what the feedback is. Having the learner, having the DA repeat back to you, okay, this is the feedback that I just heard, is really, really important. It's really, really important for the design associate to hear themselves say, this is what the feedback was. And it's important for you to be able to hear, yep, that's what, we're in agreement here. I love this. Let's see, Mark has sent something out to everybody. I think you have to start from a place of trust, not suspicion and fear, especially in the early days of DAs. Coaching sessions can be very intimidating because they don't know you yet, so trust is just starting out. I love it. Double down on all the things done right and let them get to a place where they can be self-critical. Absolutely. Good. And then there's follow-up, right? So after we've given them feedback, all right, there should be follow-up. So there should be goals that come out of feedback. There should be something that's scheduled. Maybe the goal is, I haven't been using a reference list. We've agreed that the reference list is a really important thing to do. To say I'm going to do the reference list on every appointment from now on is probably too much of a stretch. So for the next week, for the next, let's say, 8 appointments, you're going to use a reference list on at least 4 of those. Okay, good. So now we've got a specific goal in place and we can measure to that. We understand that this is what it's going to look like, and we've got a very clear plan and next steps on what to do. The other thing that I would say is when you're giving feedback to somebody, limit yourself to just 1 or 2 things to work on. Nobody can fix 18 things at one time. So this is where training and coaching are very, very different. As people are being trained in the Inspired Sales System, they're being trained on everything, but you can't work on everything at the same time. You can learn it like rote memorization, you can learn it at one time, but to be able to then go back and coach it all at one time, even to say, today we're going to work on your company story, it's too much. I mean, that's too much to say that we're going to fix at one time or improve at one time. It really has to be done in little chunks and to practice things deeply. We'll get into that in a future session. So that's the general flow of a coaching session. Now, when we think about doing this specifically with a ride-along, okay? So your design associates are going on ride-alongs with you guys right now. I like to think of a ride-along in 3 steps. This is what we're going to do before the appointment, this is what we're going to do during the appointment, and this is what we're going to do after the appointment. Remember that the coaching model, the purpose of a ride-along is for you to be able to transfer skill to your design associate. And so generally the way that this works is your first few ride-alongs, it is really all about you doing whatever process you use. I'll say the Inspired Sales System, but whatever process that you use, the first few ride-alongs are about you modeling that process for your design associate and for your design associate to watch. Now, when I say watch, I really don't mean for them to sit on the couch and just be quiet and observe and not be engaged. Maybe you don't want them to talk to the customer yet. That's okay. That's your call. But when they get back to the van, they should be able to document what they saw and what they heard. And if they're not being challenged to do that, then they're not going to actively listen as tight as they could. In other words, let's take it as far as we can take it. You give your design associate one of the competency evaluation forms, and you say, during this appointment, I don't want you to do this in front of the customer, but when we go back out to the van, I want you to mark on the form what you saw me do and what you saw me not do. I want you to see where I hit everything and where I didn't hit everything. And it's not so much because you're asking your design associate to help you get better, although it may. What it really is you are forcing your design associate to really, really actively listen to what's happening in that appointment. I had a design associate, I'd take him on ride-alongs, and if I was doing everything, he'd practically fall asleep sitting on the couch. Well, that's a worthless ride-along. That does nothing for you to actually listen until I handed him the assessment form and said, you're going to grade me when this is done. And then all of a sudden, he's sitting on the edge of his seat listening to every word that I said. It makes a big difference when they know that you're going to ask them for feedback on the appointment after you're done. So even though this is a you watch thing, yes, it's watching, but it's very active listening. It's actively watching. You get to a point where now you're doing, but your design associate is helping. So maybe you hand them their tablet. Maybe they even create a training task on their tablet and they measure at the same time you're measuring. Maybe you have them help you with the warm-up, or maybe you have them ask the transition questions. At some point, you start giving them little pieces of the system. Maybe there's somebody that they've got a ton of flooring experience and they absolutely love the product. Maybe you hand them step 6 and say, you're going to present the product to the customer and help the customer pick the product out. Well, it doesn't have to be in the order of the steps. If they're coming in with a ton of flooring experience, let them help the customer pick the floor out. So you decide what makes sense with you and your design associate, but slowly you're giving more and more to the DA until, okay, now as a franchise owner, I'm just going to help you, but you're going to do this. And then finally, you're in the back seat, and the design associate is doing the appointment. You're simply watching them do it. So these numbers are not exact. I know every design associate is different, and you can't say that this is an exact number. Every appointment's different. But what I would say is typically during pre-training, what's a great way to do this is for your design associate to create a training customer in Salesforce. Now mark it as, exclude from report so that there's no chance of an error there. Have them sync it, write the proposal as a shadow proposal, sync, and then you can compare the two in Salesforce side by side. And that's forcing them to not only do the training task on the tablet, but to actually run everything all the way through Salesforce. Ride-alongs 1 through 5, maybe it's 1 through 6, 7, whatever it is. 1 through 5 is the I do you watch phase. Ride-along 6 through 10 is the I do you help phase. Maybe it's 11 through 20, maybe it's, whatever, but there's a period of time here from 6 to 20 where you're slowly starting to give them more and more of the system until by the time you get to ride-along 21, 22, 23, they're essentially running the appointment. You're jumping in if you absolutely have to, but for the most part, they're running it. And then after training, you're still doing ride-alongs. So, ride-alongs 26 through 50, continue to use the coaching assessment form, continue to use the coaching model, and just help them get better. So when I think about pre-appointment, right? So this is what's going to happen before the appointment. It's important to understand who's going to do what. So those of you that are doing a ton of ride-alongs, help us out with this. How are you setting the customer expectations when two of you are walking into the room?
I'll go. So, I usually have April do the setup warm-up call. And so she will have established that relationship with the customer before we get there. And we're at the point in our ride-alongs where she's doing more. So I let her take the lead. We'll talk about it before we get there. Okay, you're taking the lead on this one. How far do you want to go with it? What do you feel comfortable with? At what point are you going to try to pass it back to me, do you think? And then I'll let her knock on the door. I'll let her greet the customer. I'll kind of hang back. I'll let her introduce me. And that's how we do it.
So to get picky, when she introduces you, how does she introduce you?
She introduces me as the owner, and she
Okay.
usually tells people that she's in training and that we're riding together because I'm helping her and you know, I think we talked about that up front initially, and I think she said she felt comfortable letting people know that she was in training, and like she
Okay.
felt like that was.
Okay, so if that works for you guys, great, right? There's not a right or wrong here. It's just you both are on the same page and are both comfortable with it, right?
Mhm.
Some people would prefer that the franchise owner be introduced as, you know, this is my helper today, or this is my production coordinator, or whatever, right? So something else, so that you're sort of not forcing, but you're setting the customer's expectation that it's the DA that's actually the one that's in charge of this appointment, rather than the other way around. Other thoughts, when you guys are getting ready to run an appointment, what are some of the things that you guys are talking about to set yourself up for a good appointment during a ride-along?
One of the things that I do when I'm doing ride-alongs with coaching my DAs is, as we're getting ready to go in, we're very clear about who's doing what, are you leading this? Am I leading this? Am I doing the company story? Are you doing the company story? But then if it's mostly their appointment, I let them know that I will be a chit chat buddy, just kind of stand around and talking. But if they need me, then they need to pull me into the conversation by saying something like, "What do you think, Mark?" Or "Hey, Mark, can I ask you to take a look at this?" When they actively solicit me, that's them telling me it's time for me to step in.
Good. So you got a safe word built in.
I like
Love
that,
it.
actually.
Yeah.
Good. What else are you guys doing ahead of the appointment to sort of set yourself up for success?
I tried to go over, like, if we have done a setup call and we know what the customer might be interested in. I know that one of the things that April is really working on is getting more familiar with our product line. So we might have a discussion ahead of time about the particular products that we think we might be showing, and which ones she might be thinking about pulling, and you know, helping her think more through that process.
Good. I like that. The other thing I would suggest is actually going through and reviewing the assessment form ahead of time, especially if you're telling them, okay, I'm going to do these steps and you're going to do those steps. I mean, you guys know I'm very process driven, so it makes sense for me. If it doesn't work for you, that's okay. But for me, it makes a lot of sense to sit down with the competency assessment form and say, you know, these are the steps that you're doing and these are the things that I'm looking for. All right, during the appointment, what are you guys doing during the appointment? So you've set yourself up for success. What are you guys doing during the appointment to make sure that you've got a very successful, not only a successful appointment from a customer standpoint, but also a very successful coaching standpoint?
So many suggestions.
Oh my gosh. And I'm looking at him going, I do all of these badly.
So one of the things that when we go out to the van, we talk about all the specific words that we heard the customer say, because they help us find the exact things. Like I point her directly to, like I reiterate the listening, how important a listening is and what we've heard. I ask her what she's heard and we talk about that.
Good. Good. What else are you guys doing during the appointment?
I would second that. Once we get into the van, we talk about strategy, which it really comes off as what's the situation with the particular customer, what products are going to be in play because they have dogs or cats or whatever the case may be. So you're talking strategy and okay, what do those options look like? And how are you going to best position those for the customer so that they understand why why the DAs are recommending that essentially. So it's just a lot of strategic conversation around making sure that we're, to Kim's point, listening and solving through the entire consultation process.
I'll be transparent. I think the second half of this is an area where I have great weakness, because usually at this point I'm getting very anxious about the amount of time we've spent with the customer. And as that clock is ticking, my brain starts thinking about, okay, I have 3 other appointments to get done today, plus a phone call with Arlen, plus, that I start getting very anxious at the tail end of this. It becomes less coaching, a lot more, here are the 3 to write up and let's get back in there.
Good.
That's
By the way,
just my reality. I'm not saying it's right.
I don't have you on that many calls, Mark. It's okay.
Arlen, buddy, it ain't you. It's everybody.
I totally agree, Mark. Oh my gosh, you took words right out of my mouth.
So it is important during the appointment that we do what we said we were going to do. If I'm the one that's running the appointment, then I need to run the appointment the way that I want them to do it and set the standard. If I'm helping, then stay in my lane, and that is the hardest thing in the world for me to do. But if I'm doing a ride along with the design associate, and we've said ahead of time, this is who's going to do what. It's really important. Unless the DA invokes the safe words and says, "Mark, I need your help," then okay, then I'm going to help. But until I get invited to move into their lane, I'm going to stay in my lane, which is hard to do. And then, yeah, you're right. It's really, really hard. If you're in that zone, you're right along 20, 21, 22. It's what we used to call crash and burn, right? You're letting the DA fail, which is a really, really hard thing to do. I say though, at the end of the day, we are there to close an appointment. We're there to close a sale. So if you have to jump in, jump in. But the idea is to try to get the DA to do as much as they possibly can, and then wait for them to use the safe words to get you into it.
Arlen, I was thinking,
sorry.
No, because I was thinking, if you were in their shoes, can you imagine how scary that would be when your owner is watching you in a home if you don't have any flooring experience? I was just that's so overwhelming, right? So you got to do this with grace, because I can just only imagine someone doing that to me and watching when I don't really know what I'm doing, in the beginning phases of the training period.
It's funny you say that, Jenny, because I was about to bring up a point, which is this just like echoes your exact sentiment, which is, again, prior to the appointment, we've agreed on who's doing what, and I've got freedom to chit chat. So for example, if I know I'm going in with Jordan and we're going to work on her company story and her inspection video, then I'm ambidextrously eared, right? I'm very, very tuned in when she's doing the company story, and I'm very, very, very much not tuned in and just chit-chatting the customer during the other thing. So she really only gets my laser attention during the part where in advance she said, this is where I want to focus today. That may be the wrong way to do it, but there's a certain amount of freedom that comes with knowing I don't have to pay attention while she's doing the measure. I can just hang out with the customer and talk about whatever.
Jenny, the other thing I would say is if you bring a design associate on and let's say for the first 5 or 6 appointments that you guys run, you give them the assessment form. So the first 5 or 6, you're not grading them at all, they're grading you. So by the time it's your turn to start giving them some feedback, they've already had the privilege, if you will, of giving you some feedback, right? So maybe it takes some of the sting out of it.
Yeah.
It's sort of it's a weird position to put yourself in, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you got to be super supportive because I can't imagine me doing that and somebody watching, you know, and you do it in bite-sized chunks, which is
Yep.
very helpful, right? But even like doing the company story, I know they practice during, you know, training and whatnot, just going out there and having your owner watch. I mean, it must be, you know, nerve-wracking for sure. So.
Yeah. Good. All right. So after the appointment, we talked a little bit about feedback. So if I'm doing the appointment, I do want to ask the DA to give me feedback. If I'm helping, yep, ask for feedback, give feedback. If I was the one watching and doing the evaluating, then I'm going to ask the DA what they did well and what they would improve on before I give them the feedback. I absolutely want to use the competency assessment form. And again, this is where, you know, you've decided in your business, we don't do this or we don't do this. Okay, I'm not here to argue that with you. So you can take the Excel sheet that I send you and modify it if you have to for your location. Maybe that's not the what do I want to say? Maybe it's not the 100%. This is the, you know, we're going to tick every box type of thing. But at the end of the day, if you tweak things to make them really work for you and for your business, then hold them to that standard. And this is what you're looking for them to do, and make the tool work for you. Develop an improvement plan, and then, you know, I do ask you to document the ride-alongs, and part of this is for them, so that they have the opportunity to see just how much stuff that they've done. Part of it's for you. I don't want you to document the ride-alongs. I want them to document the ride-alongs. I want them to go on the sheet and put them down there. You know, if anybody ever came back later and said, well, you know, I wasn't effectively trained in this job, I want you to be able to pull the sheet back up and say, yeah, look, we did 52 ride-alongs. What are you talking about? You had a ton of training, right? And to be, you know, fully transparent, I also look at these from a statistical standpoint, and I can tell you that as I go back over the last couple of years and I see these are design associates that had, let's say, anywhere over 20 ride-alongs compared to how well they came out of training and how successful they were in their first 90 days out of training, the ones that really got good at doing the company story and the ones that really got the ride-alongs documented anyway, are the ones that came out stronger. Now, that's not 100% correlation, but it's a very, very strong correlation. Let's see, do you do the CAF on every ride-along? You don't necessarily have to do the full assessment form on every ride-along, but I would absolutely, if nothing else, I would focus in on the parts that you're going to work on, right? So if you've agreed with Jordan that, hey, we're going to work on the inspection video, then that's really all I'm going to. We agreed that that's what we're going to do, then that's what I'm going to evaluate. Good. Ride-along sheet we've seen, delivering feedback. So the last page of the Inspired Sale competency assessment form is this page. And it's really, if you just work through this page, you're asking the design associate, what did you do well? What do you feel like needs the most work? This is what I saw. And here's your final score. And the version that I'm sending out right now, if you just come in and mark it, now if you do it on paper, it's paper and that's fine. If you do it in Excel, like you go back to the office or something and mark it up, or you got your laptop or pull it down into the tablet or whatever, it'll score it for you based on what you put in each one of these ratings. And I would highly encourage you just to limit yourself to 1 or 2 things that needs to be that you'd work on, and then those are the 1 or 2 things that you work on for the next, you know, in your next practice session. All right, so the Inspired Sales System. This is my 45 seconds on the Inspired Sales System today. And the reason I say that it's this quick is because I'm not diving into this step by step, but I want, you guys know this, but this is what your DAs heard this week. The reason the Inspired Sales System works is because it mirrors exactly the reasons that people make buying decisions. So the first part of this Inspired Sales System is all about people. So if you think about it, we're doing a warm-up, we're doing a reference list, we're driving a message of urgency, we're doing a setup call. All of that is about the person. Yeah, we're getting some information about the floor, that's great, but that's because we're going to use it later. The first part of the Inspired Sales System is all about people. The second part of the Inspired Sales System is all about the company. So what are we going to do as a company? What is our company all about? How do we do installations? All that. It's all about our process as a company. The third piece is about the product itself, and then finally price. So you guys know the 4 reasons that people buy is because of people, company, product, and price. And the Inspired Sale is designed in that order, right? So, and then the last steps are residual meaning. So the only reason I bring this up today is there's no misalignment. It's just as a reminder, when you're talking to your design associate about the Inspired Sales System, when you're talking to them about any sales system, those 4 pieces need to be in place. And the reason that the Inspired Sales System is designed in the order that it is because it hits those in the exact same order that people mentally use to make a decision about something. All right, I'm going to move off of this. I told you this was quick. Anything about this that you want to stop and chat about? Okay. So one of the things that I've asked, and I told the design associates this week, just very, very clear, very transparent, very blunt. This is the worst week of training. I hate that it's the first week, but it has to be. So one of the things that I do to help people learn the company story is I take the first week and I make them memorize the order of the slides. Not memorize the company story, just know the order of the slides. And so in order for them to do that, now that doesn't work for everybody, and that's okay. The first week I ask them to memorize the order of the slides. The second week I ask them to put content on each slide. The third week I ask them to put transitions between the slides. And the fourth week, then we start talking about how do you personalize it and really make it your own. So if your design associates are sitting in a corner somewhere just saying the names of the slides, that's why they're doing it. I hope they're doing that. So that you know the names that I've given them, and you will get a copy of this PowerPoint so that you've got this. I call this the My Job slide, the Promise slide, Serve, because we first serve others, the Map slide, Reviews, BBB slide, Stars, and I absolutely love this new slide in the company story. There's so much that you can do with this. I mean, we could have a training session just on this one slide. Trusted, installation, and then there's the installation video. And after the installation video, it's much quicker than it was before. We've got choice, direct, versus, easy, happy, and build it. And then, of course, I've given them the cheat sheet right here. So the only thing, from a company story perspective, the only thing I'm asking them to do this week for the company story is to memorize this in order. So they should be able to come on the call next week and say, My Job, Promise, Serve, Map, Reviews, BBB, Stars, Trusted, Installation, Installation Video, Choice, Direct, Easy, Happy, Choice, Direct, versus Easy, Happy, Build It. I've got to get my second half right. So, I mean, this might be a fun game you do while you're driving to an appointment, is have them recite this. I mean, obviously, if this is a salesperson that's got 30 years experience, they may or may not be into the memorization. I get it. But it is a great way to know what's in my company story, and it's setting a foundation in the brain waves to be able to then add on to it. So your DAs this week have been given some homework. First, to complete week 1 in Floor U, and then to begin working on Salesforce, the Salesforce stuff in Floor U, to memorize the step 1 word-for-word transition questions, to memorize the company story slide order, to go do the ride-alongs and track them and to get reference list photos. So questions about what I've asked your DAs to do this week? All right. So what is your homework this week? Yep, you have homework as well. Quiz your DA. Quiz them on the step 1 transition questions. Quiz them on the company story slide order, right? So if you took and printed out this one sheet, and then maybe at that point you're letting them drive, but have that sheet out and ask them, what is the company story slide order? Quiz them on it, okay? As I told you at the beginning of this, I've got over 50 people on the Zoom. It's not possible for me to ask everybody to do that while we're on the call. So in order for them to sort of to hold some pressure around them or to hold some tension around them actually doing this, quiz them on it. Continue to get ride-alongs, and for reference list pictures, help your DA find a way to get them. So if that means you're doing a 6-month warranty check or whatever, if you want some suggestions on how to get your DA to go do reference list pictures, we can have that discussion. But quiz them on what they're doing and help them get their ride-alongs and their reference list pictures. That's the big homework for this week. Questions or comments on that? So Mark says we don't use the reference list photos. We use reviews from Google. How does that change this? So that would, for you, you're going to take this off. By the way, I tell them that reference list is a tactic inside the inspired sale. So whether you do it or don't do it doesn't change the fact that you're doing the inspired sale. It just means that that's one of the tactics that you've decided not to use. Okay. So instead, you might help your DA understand how you do the Google review thing. If you're printing it out and handing it to a customer, if you're just giving the customer links to Google reviews, what is it that you're doing? And it might be that their challenge this week is, instead of going out and getting reference list photos, they're helping you go get Google reviews so that there's more of them out there. All right, good. So our next sales leadership call is next Friday from 10 to 11:30. I want to make sure, I sent this out, but I want to make sure that everybody has had a chance to see this. So today we went through coaching. The sales leadership class, this has changed. This is the reboot of the sales leadership class. So the sales leadership class, we will not meet every week. We'll do this on an every other week type of thing. So this week is about coaching. We will not meet, this class will not meet next week. The design associates will, but you guys won't. Your next meeting will be on March the 3rd, and that's going to be business planning. Joe is going to walk you through doing a business plan with your design associate. March 17th, performance management. Joe is going to come on again and walk you through goal setting and review. Now, the week after that, that's the inspired sales class week, and that's the week that I will ask you to meet with your design associate each day and give me a copy of the assessment form and all that jazz. More information on that to come. Give it a couple of weeks after that, and then I will be back on with you talking about practice sessions and what does it mean to actually really practice in your office. And then the business management call is either going to be Chad or Mary Ann. They're working on the content together, and that'll be April 21st for this class. So all of these should already be on your Outlook. You should already have meeting invites for these. But when you get to next week and say, wait a minute, where's the call? There's not one next week. It is on purpose spread out so that part of sales leadership class is before Inspired Sale Week, and then part of sales leadership class happens after your DA has completed their training. And that's an intentional shift so that you guys are getting the support that you need to really, really help coach and retain your design associates after because it feels today like after your DAs get finished with training, then it's like, okay, they fall off a cliff from a support standpoint. Not them, I mean, you're supporting them, but for us trying to help support you. Questions about the schedule? Anything? Questions about anything? How do you get an 8-year-old snot out of corduroy? I mean, anything.
Going back to
when we were talking about if the design associate sort of has a different idea than you did on what they did well, how is a good way to respond, or what is a good way to respond, do you feel like, to that?
I'll let the group answer. Because I mean, I met Cody. You could probably just slap Cody upside the head and say, no, you idiot. But that's probably not the right answer. So I'll let the group answer that first. When you've asked your design associate, what do you feel like you did well, and what they respond is completely different than what you know, the way you saw it. How do you address that with your DA?
I think you have to ask more questions and open up a conversation and see where their perspective is coming from.
Oh, really? What makes you say that?
Exactly.
I thought I killed it. Oh, really? What makes you say that? Like, why do you think, tell me how you felt like that was such a great performance.
I try and find points of agreement with them. So if I listen to the company story and it's a train wreck, and I go out to the car and like, yeah, I killed the company story, and like, huh, all right. Well, walk me through it. Where were you, where were your bright spots? And then literally they just have them dig in a little bit. So, oh, yeah, I did a great job on this and blah, 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 blah. And then, it gives you an opportunity to give very specific tactical feedback slide by slide. So usually when you drill in a little bit further, you could find places like, yeah, you did well on that slide. You did well on that slide. And after you find a couple places of agreement, then you can really highlight the ones where they went completely off the rails. And usually by that time, they'll be like, oh, yeah, I didn't think about that. So.
Yeah, I've had similar conversations like that. And I a lot of times I'll ask, tell me the parts that you felt really resonated with the customer, where did you see them actually pick up on the things you were saying, and what was their reaction?
Okay. Very helpful. Thank you. I like
Good.
all of that. Because I have a tendency, I think, to, well, yeah, I just don't want to get in a situation where I immediately disagree, obviously. So, yeah.
Also,
Thank you.
sometimes if they're really delusional, it's sometimes an indication of super, super, super high ego strength. And so that may be something you need to watch out for in future coaching sessions, because they could be, if they're that high ego strength and that delusional, they're going to be very, very difficult to train.
Yeah.
And if they think they really did well and resonated with the customer, and you can see that they didn't, it will be an uphill battle.
Yes. I think, yeah, I think I have a little work in that area, but I think he'll come around, and I'm giving him grace because he hasn't even been through the official training yet. So, needs to be a lot of grace there too. So.
Beth, I'll give you another tactic, but it's too soon to use this. Okay, so this is something that just put this in the back of your mind and bring it out like 3 or 4 months from now, right? This is way too soon for this. But film him. So you may or may not be able to do that in a customer's home, right? But you could maybe take a real customer's home. But if you had a friend or neighbor that's willing to play along, and Cody doesn't know that he's being, well, maybe he knows he's being filmed, but he doesn't know that the customer's in on it. Or just do it in the office. You're the customer and just film what he's doing. Sometimes seeing yourself on film makes a huge difference, right? But it's way too early for that now. I'm putting that as an idea for down the road.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Anything else, guys? All right. Well, thank you guys for jumping on. Again, your next call will be in 2 weeks, and that will be with Joe. He's going to walk you through what it means to put together a business plan for your design associate and give you some philosophical information as well as some tactical information around that. And I look forward to seeing you guys again when I see you. Take care, gang.
Thanks, Arlen.
Thanks, Arlen.
Thanks, Arlen.
Thanks.